There you are. Hey, how's it going? Let's play. This is Dagon, as you can see. Dagon is a faithful, interactive and adaptation of H.P. Lovecraft's work focused on story and atmosphere. You will not find difficult choices, action sequence, or inventory management here, and movement is limited, progressing through locations along with the plot. Unusual, but cool. They've obviously
I am writing this under an appreciable mental strain, since by tonight I shall be no more.
Whoa, that's a start. During the game, you will encounter interactive elements. Some of them will allow you to just adjust the mic. Continue journey. Others reveal some of the will allow you to continue your journey. Others reveal interesting facts about their original short story, its historical background, and the author. I've genuinely never read a single H.P. Lovecraft book. Maybe this will inspire me to do so. Some of the trivia is hidden. In order to find these secrets, focus your eyes and look for the Elder sign. Boom, boom, boom. Cool. Oh, there we go. There's the Elder sign. Lovecraft's letters. As the letters, my case is peculiar. I write such things exactly and easily as rightly as I would utter the same topics in conversation. Indeed, epistolary expression is with me largely replacing conversation. As my condition of the nervous prostration becomes more and more acute, I cannot bear to talk much now, and I'm becoming as silent as the spectre himself. My loquacity extends itself on paper. H.P. Lovecraft to Reinhard Kleiner, December 23rd, 1917. Throughout his life, Lovecraft penned around 100,000 letters to his friends and fans, out of which about 10% survive to this day, but his tendency to endless correspondence was a relatively low late growth. In youth, I scarcely did any letter writing. Okay. You can read Discover Trivia immediately or go back and find them later. Main menu, blah blah. Show trivia upon finding them. Can't turn around. Okay.
Penniless, and at the end of my supply of the drug which alone makes life endurable, I can bear the torture no longer, and shall cast myself from this garret window into the squalid street below.
Oh, is it morphine?
Do not think from my slavery to morphine that I am a weakling or a degenerate.
Didn't say anything, mate.
When you have read these hastily scrawled pages, you may guess, though never fully realize, why it is that I must have forgetfulness or death.
Morphine entered into the use of the 19th century and was routinely administered to treat severe pain during the American Civil War and World War I. It was also sold without restrictions until 1940. Fucking hell. Morphine became more popular after the invention of the hypodermic syringe around 1854. Friedrich Thurner, who first isolated the substance, originally named it morphium, after Morpheus, the Greek god associated with dreams. That's really interesting. At the time when Dagon was published, morphine abuse, known as soldier's disease, already posed a big problem to the United States, which is why it wasn't sold over the counter afterwards.
It was in one of the most open and least frequented parts of the broad Pacific that the packet of which I was supercargo fell a victim to the German sea raider. The Great War was then at its very beginning, and the ocean forces of the Hun had not completely sunk to their later degradation.
It's like visual storytelling. Quite like it actually. It's this, like a change of pace.
So that our vessel was made a legitimate prize, whilst we of her crew were treated with all the fairness and consideration due us as naval prisoners.
The Huns were Central Asian nomads who established a dominion in Europe and invaded the Roman Empire in the 5th century AD. They are known as brutal, deadly warriors and master of quick raids who also developed powerful composite bows, lassos, and early siege weapons. During World War I, the British used the word Hun as a synonym for Germans in order to emphasize their brutality. However, the term originated when the German Emperor Wilhelm II gave a speech to his troops on the 27th of July 1900 before they embarked to China. Should you encounter the enemy, he will be defeated. No quarter will be given. Prisoners will not be taken. Whoever falls into your hands is forfeited. Just as 1,000 years ago, the Huns under the King Attila made a name for themselves, one that even today makes them seem mighty in history and legend. May the name German be affirmed by you in such a way in China that no Chinese will ever again dare to look cross-eyed at a German. Their refusal to take prisoners was a clear breach of the laws and customs of war adopted during the First Hague Convention of 1899.
So liberal, indeed, was the discipline of our captors, that 5 days after we were taken, I managed to escape alone in a small boat with water and provisions for a good length of time. When I finally found myself adrift and free, I had but little idea of my surroundings.
Well, see, if that actually happened to me, the only thing I'd be terrified about was, like, you could be out there for months, you know?
Never a competent navigator, I could only guess vaguely by the sun and stars that I was somewhat south of the equator. Of the longitude, I knew nothing, and no island or coastline was in sight.
Like, eventually you would wash up shore, but how long? Oh, there we are.
The weather kept fair, and for uncounted days I drifted aimlessly beneath the scorching sun, waiting either for some passing ship or to be cast on the shores of some habitable land. But neither ship nor land appeared, and I began to despair in my solitude upon the heaving vastness of unbroken blue.
It's crazy to think that there's so much life underneath you at that moment, because, like, there's nothing.
The change happened whilst I slept.
There's nothing for as far as the eye can see. It's just complete, just water. But underneath you, there's like a massive, thriving ecosystem of thousands and thousands of different species of fish and all sorts.
Its details I shall never know. For my slumber, though troubled and dream-infested, was continuous.
So weird. Whenever you think of eldritch horror, you can't not have tentacles.
When at last I awoke, it was to discover myself half sucked into a slimy expanse of hellish black mire, which extended about me in monotonous undulations as far as I could see, and in which my boat lay grounded some distance away.
Sexy.
Though one might well imagine that my first sensation would be of wonder at so prodigious and unexpected a transformation of scenery, I was in reality more horrified than astonished.
Yeah, no shit.
For there was in the air, and in the rotting soil, a sinister quality which chilled me to the very core.
I don't like that eye doesn't look dead, rather just staring like directly at me.
The region was putrid with the carcasses of decaying fish, and of other, less describable things which I saw protruding from the nasty mud of the unending plain. Perhaps I should not hope to convey in mere words the unutterable hideousness that can dwell in absolute silence and barren immensity.
I actually quite like that, because when it comes to any eldritch horror, the horror aspect comes from, like, the unknowable. Like, you can't describe what you're looking at, because if it, like, that's the whole point of it. Like, I can't remember the movie, but I'll put it up on screen right now, with Nicolas Cage. It was something like the sound of color, or something like that. It'll be, you can see it now. But that movie, like, they don't have a clue what's going on, and you can't really make heads or tails of what's going on. But that's the whole point, because it's so unfathomable in its concept. That's the horror, because you wouldn't understand if an eldritch horror like was to happen to you. That's the whole point. You would have no clue what was going on. You can't actually comprehend what's happening as a human being, and that in itself is horrifying.
There was nothing within hearing, and nothing in sight, save a vast reach of black slime. Yet the very completeness of the stillness and the homogeneity of the landscape oppressed me with a nauseating fear. The sun was blazing down from a sky which seemed to me almost black in its cloudless cruelty, as though reflecting the inky marsh beneath my feet.
Squidgy.
As I crawled into the stranded boat, I realized that only one theory could explain my position.
Drugs.
Through some unprecedented volcanic upheaval, a portion of the ocean floor must have been thrown to the surface, exposing regions for which innumerable millions of years had lain hidden under unfathomable watery depths. So great was the extent of the new land which had risen beneath me that I could not detect the faintest noise of the surging ocean, straining my ears as I might. Nor were there any seafowl to prey upon the dead things.
Oh shit, that's quite cool. I didn't even notice that. I heard the click in my headphones. I didn't actually see what I was looking at. Volcanic eruptions sometimes result in the creation of islands. Most of them are transient and erode after some time, but some prove permanent. The floating pumice, porous rock created when superheated pressurized rock is ejected from a volcano can move across long distances and transport barnacles and macroalgae that cling to it. In 2001, rafts of pumice created during the eruption of a volcano near Tonga, Polynesia, eventually reached Australia. Wow.
For several hours I sat thinking or brooding in the boat, which lay upon its side and afforded a slight shade as the sun moved across the heavens. As the day progressed, the ground lost some of its stickiness and seemed likely to dry sufficiently for traveling purposes in a short time. That night I slept but little, and the next day I made for myself a pack containing food and water, preparatory to an overland journey in search of the vanished sea and possible rescue.
I'd be worried in case I came back somehow. Okay, so that little trivia icon was kind of hidden in the shape of the soil, so I'm just curious if there's anything else. I probably missed one. I don't know if there's one every single that little moment here when you have a look an option to look around. I don't think so though. I actually quite like the little trivia. I thought it'd be kind of boring, but it's not. Some of the things are actually very interesting.
On the third morning, I found the soil dry enough to walk upon with ease. The odor of the fish was maddening, but I was too much concerned with graver things to mind so slight an evil, and set out boldly for an unknown goal.
Yeah, that's what I heard, that little click. That kind of indicated that I was looking at a wee trivia question, but I don't think it's in every single one. No, okay.
All day I forged steadily westward, guided by a faraway hummock which rose higher than any other elevation on the rolling desert.
The thing is, like, That wouldn't be so far-fetched if you've seen that in, like, our oceans, because, like, we discover species every day, and some just look straight up alien. Aw. His eyes said why.
That night, I encamped, and on the following day still travelled toward the hummock, though that object seemed scarcely nearer than when I had first espied it.
What, you gonna encamp here? What? Why not over there? Or there, anywhere, but why? No. I'd be worried in case something came alive. The horrors of the ocean. The creator of the Cthulhu mythos and the fictional underwater city of was convinced that life could not exist at the bottom of the ocean because the water pressure would make it uninhabitable. Yeah, well, today we know the darkest depths of the ocean are home to many peculiar organisms. The deepest dwelling fish we have discovered so far, the marina snailfish, can live about 8,000 meters, more than 26,000 feet below the ocean's surface, in never-ending darkness and the hellishly crushing pressures, hundreds of times stronger than those found at sea level. Upon glancing at the modern photos of deep-sea creatures such as the anglerfish, the fangtooth, or the viperfish, and their truly Lovecraftian characteristics, it's hard not to find some irony in this. I went snorkeling not that long ago at all, like maybe 2 weeks ago, because I was in Spain. See, diving just like a meter, 2 meters, see the pressure in your ears is quite substantial. So the fact that something can live a phenomenal amount of the phenomenal depth of 26,000 feet is absolutely incredible. It's actually like, it's difficult to even comprehend how something organic with like soft tissue can survive at such depths. I suppose what makes sense is...
By the fourth evening, I attained the base of the mound, which turned out to be much higher than it had appeared from a distance.
Aye, sorry. It would make sense that obviously when they are like, I don't know, born at that depth, that they're used to that depth. Same way like when you, like human beings on submarines, they can't just rise straight to the top because, you know, they die from, I can't remember what it's like the bends or something, the bends. So I think the actual structure of the creature is used to that pressure and it can habitate the space that it's in because it's born in it, rather than like, oh, it was at the very top. But even then, like, whales can plummet to incredible depths and have no issues. You know what I mean? Especially like squid as well. See, like, giant squid, they can kind of surface quite a reasonable depth and then just plummet back down again and disappear. It's absolutely incredible what these animals can do.
An intervening valley setting it out in sharper relief from the general surface. Too weary to ascend, I slept in the shadow of the hill.
What's that? I think that's anything. Oh, that's just the sun gleaming or something. I mean, like, yeah, this is you can stay here. It's not as bad.
I know not why my dreams were so wild that night.
Really? You can't guess why?
But ere the waning and fantastically gibbous moon had risen far above the eastern plain, I was awake in a cold perspiration, determined to sleep no more. Such visions as I had experienced were too much for me to endure again, and in the glow of the moon I saw how unwise I had been to travel by day.
Why?
Without the glare of the parching sun, my journey would have cost me less energy. Indeed, I now felt quite able to perform the ascent which had deterred me at sunset. Picking up my pack, I started for the crest.
crest of the eminence. Oh, there you go. The loner. Contrary to popular opinion, Lovecraft was not an ever-frowning, eccentric, grumpy loner. He considered himself to be a person who appreciated humour. However, you've got to say that, like, I am a person who appreciates humour. I don't know if you know this. Moreover, he would often meet with friends in his apartment at various cafes in Brooklyn and Manhattan. At times, his social life was so intensive, his work would suffer for months. There was a point when he finally decided he needed to put an end to daily meetings and the loitering in New York cafeterias, and resorted to hiding at home and reading with the main room light turned off, pretending he wasn't there whenever a friend knocked on his door. He also had another method of deterring his guests, which involved greeting them in a bathrobe, with an unmade bed visible in the background and piles of paper scattered across the floor. It wouldn't deter me, but also, I guess back then it would be more of like a, oh dear heavens, God no. Man, put some clothes on!
I have said that the unbroken monotony of the rolling plain was a source of vague horror to me. But I think my horror was greater when I gained the summit of the mound and looked down the other side into an immeasurable pit or canyon.
Yeah, I'm just thinking about, see, when I speak loudly, I'm always worried that my mic won't pick it up properly, because for some reason, if the audio level goes to, it's just, fuck it, doesn't matter, it's just settings, I need to find out about what I do apologise.
Whose black recesses the moon had not yet soared high enough to illumine. I felt myself on the edge of the world.
I mean, at least the sky's pretty.
Peering over the rim into a fathomless chaos of eternal night.
Jump.
Through my terror ran curious reminiscences of Paradise Lost.
See if when you're at a precipice, see when you have that little voice in your head that says, oh, you should jump, like, that's called, I can't remember, in English it's called Cold to the Void, but it originated in France, so wherever the France words are for it, Cold to the Void, but it was that sort of, that voice that kind of tells you, oh, you should do it, you know, that's what that is.
And of Satan's hideous climb through the unfashioned realms of darkness. As the moon climbed higher in the sky, I began to see that the slopes of the valley were not quite so perpendicular as I had imagined.
I actually want to find more trivia because it is genuinely really interesting.
Ledges and outcroppings of rock afforded fairly easy footholds for a descent, whilst after a drop of only a few hundred feet, the declivity became very gradual.
The declivity.
Urged on by an impulse which I cannot definitely analyze, I scrambled with difficulty down the rocks and stood on the gentler slope beneath, gazing into the Stygian deeps, where no light had yet penetrated.
Getting Space Odyssey vibes.
All at once, my attention was captured by a vast and singular object on the opposite slope, which rose steeply about 100 yards ahead of me.
Looks like it's about to break into song.
An object that gleamed whitely in the newly bestowed rays of the ascending moon.
I don't know how that works because the moon looks like it's behind it, but whatever, it's okay. I thought I heard a click right there. No, okay, I don't think there's more trivia here as well. That's fine.
That it was merely a gigantic piece of stone, I soon assured myself.
Yeah, but I mean, it's so precisely cut. I don't think it's just any piece of stone, considering everything's been so bad and nothing looks man-made whatsoever. I'm not saying this is man-made, because it's definitely not. Kind of makes you think, though, if he's wandering aimlessly just to try and get somewhere, like, it kind of makes you think, did he really get here by accident? Because, you know, Or was it like preordained? Or was he led here? Or was he drawn here somehow? Lured? I'd be terrified right now. Because, okay, say that did happen to you, and like you would try and make sense of it. You wouldn't think like, oh, this is some sort of eldritch horror. You'd be like, no, like you'd probably do the same thing he did and be like, oh, must have been a volcanic eruption. It's brought the land straight up. This is what's happening. But see, when you like, how would you even comprehend like looking at that? Something that's so definitive. You know.
But I was conscious of a distinct impression that its contour and position were not altogether the work of nature.
Exactly.
A closer scrutiny filled me with sensations I cannot express.
That is where I see feeling things that you don't usually feel, as if like the place that you're standing in is giving you these sort of sensations that are otherworldly. Kind of adds to the whole panic of the situation when you realize it's not exact, it's like unnatural. This shouldn't be this way. Which is why Lovecraftian horror is really quite, you know, very its own genre of horror. You know, as I was talking before, like you can't really understand what's going on because it'd be impossible for a human being to. I want more trivia. Come on. I'm surprised there wasn't one in the moon yet.
For despite its enormous magnitude and its position in an abyss which had yawned at the bottom of the sea since the world was young, I perceived beyond a doubt that the strange object was a well-shaped monolith, whose massive bulk had known the workmanship and perhaps the worship of living and thinking creatures.
Yeah.
Dazed and frightened, yet not without a certain thrill of the scientist's or archaeologist's delight, I examined my surroundings more closely.
I just noticed that the text that's on is I don't know what those are called. I can't remember. The psychologist gives you and go, what does this mean? Yeah. Right now I see 2 dinosaurs at the bottom right. Yeah. Trivia. No. Wait, what's that? No, shit, okay. Oh, okay.
The moon, now near the zenith, shone weirdly and vividly above the towering steeps that hemmed in the chasm.
Ooh, that is kind of cool, actually.
And revealed the fact that a far-flung body of water flowed at the bottom, winding out of sight in both directions and almost lapping my feet as I stood on the slope. Across the chasm, the wavelets washed the base of the Cyclopean monolith.
Cyclopean?
On whose surface I could now trace both inscriptions and crude sculptures.
I wouldn't say that's crude. I'd say it's quite artistic.
The writing was in a system of hieroglyphics unknown to me and unlike anything I'd ever seen in books.
Oh, Cthulhu, right there. How am I up here?
Consisting for the most part of conventionalized aquatic symbols such as fishes, eels, octopi, crustaceans, mollusks, whales, and the like. Several characters obviously represented marine things which are unknown to the modern world.
Yeah. That kind of looks like the monster in, is it Below? It's a really good movie with Kristen Stewart. She got a bad rap, I think, because of Twilight, because she's actually not a bad actress. She's not like, oh my god, like, you're amazing, but she's not bad, you know. But that was a really good movie, and that's about, they do deep sea rigging, and they kind of break into the crust of something, and I'd suggest you watch it, it's very good.
But whose decomposing forms I had observed on the ocean-risen plain. It was the pictorial carving, however, that did most to hold me spellbound.
Storytelling methods. Dagon contains many themes of storytelling methods that Lovecraft developed in his later works, such as telling the story through carvings at the Mountains of Madness and a nameless. I've heard that before, at the Mountains of Madness. Journals and characters' notes, the shadow, out of time, the hunter of the dark, islands emerging from the ocean, the Call of Cthulhu, or fictional beings and deities based on real events and mythologies, Migo and the Whisper. See, Cthulhu's such an iconic creature in horror. Like, I've never once watched and read a Lovecraftian book ever, but like I think you'd struggle immensely to find somebody who doesn't know what Cthulhu is, because it's such an icon in, pop culture. It's also considered the origin of popular Cthulhu mythos. Some of the Lovecraft's other stories also conclude in a manner similar to Dagon, but let's skip the details in order to not spoil the ending. It's very kind of you.
Plainly visible across the intervening water, on account of their enormous size, were an array of bas-reliefs whose subjects would have excited the envy of a doré. I think that these things were supposed to depict men, at least a certain sort of men, though the creatures were shown disporting like fishes in the waters of some marine grotto, or paying homage at some monolithic shrine which appeared to be under the waves as well. Of their faces and forms I dare not speak in detail, for the mere remembrance makes me grow faint. Grotesque beyond the imagination of a Poe or a Bulwer. They were damnably human in general outline, despite webbed hands and feet, shockingly wide and flabby lips, glassy, bulging eyes, and other features less pleasant to recall. Curiously enough, they seem to have been chiseled badly out of proportion with their scenic background, for one of the creatures was shown in the act of killing a whale, represented as but little larger than himself. I remarked, as I say, their grotesqueness and strange size, but in a moment decided that they were merely the imaginary gods of some primitive fishing or seafaring tribe. Awestruck at this unexpected glimpse into a past beyond the conception of the most daring anthropologist, I stood musing whilst the moon cast queer reflections on the silent channel before me.
So what? Oh.
With only a slight churning to mark its rise to the surface, the thing slid into view above the dark waters. Polyphemus-like and loathsome, it darted like a stupendous monster of nightmares to the monolith, about which it flung its gigantic scaly arms, the while it bowed its hideous head and gave vent to certain measured sounds. I think I went mad then. Of my frantic ascent of the slope and cliff, and of my delirious journey back to the stranded boat, I remember little. I believe I sang a great deal, and laughed oddly when I was unable to sing.
That's another theme that's quite popular in a lot of H.P. Lovecraft's books and movies. The humans who also endure any sort of interaction with the Eldritch horrors lose their minds because they can't actually comprehend what happened, and what they looked at was so just unbelievably undescribable that it would just turn them mad.
I have indistinct recollections of a great storm sometime after I reached the boat. At any rate, I know that I heard pearls of thunder and other tones which nature utters only in her wildest moods. When I came out of the shadows, I was in a San Francisco hospital.
Thank God.
Brought thither by the captain of the American ship which had picked up my boat in mid-ocean.
So he was still there? Or was he? Did he come back, or was he always on the boat but his mind went somewhere else?
In my delirium, I had said much, but found that my words had been given scant attention.
Honestly, you just think he's had like heat stroke, like severe heat stroke, dehydration, exhaustion, and it's just made him just He's complete nonsense.
Of any land upheaval in the Pacific, my rescuers knew nothing. Nor did I deem it necessary to insist upon a thing which I knew they could not believe.
Yeah, you wouldn't even bother. Lovecraft was a prominent figure in the world of amateur journalism. In 1915, he started publishing his own journal called The Conservative, which included political and social commentary, poetry, short stories, and literacy criticism written by him and other authors. Literary criticisms by him and other authors. Howard was a skilled wordsmith, but he also took criticism to heart, which resulted in his decision to step away from writing poetry and concentrate on weird fiction again. For the first time since his teenage years, Dagon, published in 1919, is one of the short stories written during that period. In this example, excerpt from Conservative, the master of horror fiction explains his attitude toward warfare and the idea of world peace. Why any sane human being can believe in the possibility of universal peace is more than Conservative can fathom. Should the entire civilized world agree simultaneously to disarm, one or more nations would undoubtedly retain secret armaments at the proper time, take advantage of their more altruistic and less astute contemporaries in the world career of conquest against unarmed victims. No country is or ever can be above warfare until the basic impulses of the human animal shall have miraculously changed. And unfortunately, so true. Lovecraft considered himself an atheist and absolute materialist, which he attributed partly to his early childhood interest in astronomy and science in general. In his own words, "I am indeed an absolute materialist so far as actual belief goes, with not a shred of credence in any form of supernaturalism, religion, spiritualism, transcendentalism, metempsychosis, or immortality." I'm not saying that right, and it's annoying me. Metempsychosis. Metempsychosis, cool. All I can say is that I think it's damn unlikely that anything like a central cosmic will, a spirit world, or an eternal survival of personality exists. They are more preposterous and unjustified of all of the guesses which can be made out about the universe, and I am not enough of a hair splitter to pretend that I don't regard them as errant and negligible moonshine. In theory, I am an agnostic, but pending the appearance of radical evidence, I must be classed practically and provisionally as an atheist. Sources, blah, blah, blah.
Once I sought out a celebrated ethnologist and amused him with peculiar questions regarding the ancient Philistine legend of Dagon, the fish god.
Trivia. Dagon was the main deity of the Philistines, worshipped throughout the Middle East as an ancient god of fertility and crops. In Hebrew, the word Dagon, was a common noun for grain. The ruler of the Akkad, Mesopotamia, chose him as the patron saint of their world war conquests. He also appeared as the judge of the dead in the Assyrian poem and underworld prison warden in one of Babylonian texts. He is often mistakenly taken for a fish god due to the wrong interpretations of his name, as in Hebrew the word dag means fish. In H.P. Lovecraft's work, Dagon is an underwater deity ruling over the deep ones, a humanoid race with fish traits that reside in the oceans. He is worshipped by a secret code called the Esoteric Order of Dagon. Cool.
But soon perceiving that he was hopelessly conventional, I did not press my inquiries.
The Necronomicon. That's cool. Ooh, lore. The Marketer. Lovecraft's attempts to find a job in 1925 were influenced by advice he received from friends. Among others, he started freelancing for a marketing magazine where he would write announcements and commercials. Feel free to judge his copywriting skills for yourself. From an ad for Curtis Woodwork. Curtis Woodwork embraces both the usual structured units and the cleverest I cannot speak today. Cleverest contrivances of built-in or permanent furniture, such as bookcases, dressers, buffets. This is the most I've spoken all day, don't judge me. And the cupboard's early model is convinced and created with the purest art, ripest scholarship, and mellowest craftsmanship, which energetic enterprise can command. This man has such an impressive handle on the English language, but it's exhausting to enunciate every single word he says. My God. And made to conform rigidly to the architecture of each particular type of home. The cost, consideration, quality, amazing low, and the trademark on the individual pieces prevents any substitution by careless contractors. Source, blah, blah, blah. August 11, the Cthulhu Mythos. August Derleth was an American writer and anthologist. He also befriended Lovecraft and published many of his works through his company, Arkham House. Although he greatly contributed to the popularization of the author's works after his death, he is surrounded by numerous controversies. One of his most questionable decisions involved introducing the good versus evil doctrine. Derleth was a devout Catholic to the Cthulhu mythos, which contrasted with the Lovecraft's view of the world and his approach to cosmic horror. As a result, the author's works were often misunderstood and misrepresented in today's culture. It is also worth noting that Lovecraft was never really interested in creating mythology, and the term Cthulhu mythos was coined by Derleth after the author left the mortal plane. Back to this thing. Go. Is there anything else? That's good. Scientist. These days, the word scientist is a widely accepted term, but at the time Dagon was published, it was subject to wide debate. After the author used it in the story, critics pointed out that the man of science was a more appropriate term to employ. He admitted in defense of Dagon that if Dagon were to be reprinted, he would indeed use the phrase they suggested. Scientist was coined as an analog to artist, but to be used when referring to those studying different branches of science. Yet, in the 19th and early 20th century, scientific researchers in Great Britain and the United States were of the opinion that man of science, resembling the term man of letters. Where have I heard that before? Man of letters? Man of letters? I don't know. Was the only proper choice among other things. It was gender specific, indicating that science was an endeavour to be pursued by only one sex. The term scientist became more accepted only after World War II, and man of science started fading into obscurity as an old-fashioned synonym. Yeah, no wonder. Women can be scientists too. So sexist.
It is at night, especially when the moon is gibbous and waning, that I see the thing. I tried morphine.
And that's why he probably tried morphine.
But the drug has given only transient surcease, and has drawn me into its clutches as a hopeless slave. So now, I am to end it all, having written a full account for the information or the contemptuous amusement of my fellow men.
Lovecraft hated tobacco, even though he used to smoke when he was 12 in order to look and feel like an adult. In his correspondence with friend Reinhard Kleiner, he claims that he quit as soon as he started wearing long pants. He also had a very strong opinion about alcohol, as evidence his letter to Zelia, that's a cool name, Brown, dated 13/29/28. As for the matter of drinking, I've never tasted intoxicating liquor and never intend to, having a strong aesthetic disgust at anything which blunts or coarsens the delicate natural equipoise of the evolved human intellect and imagination. Drinking excited my personal repugnance, hence I don't drink. Let the herd do what they will. I am rather in favour of prohibition, the prohibition of any one antisocial force as well as any other.
Often, I ask myself if it could not all have been a pure phantasm. A mere freak of fever as I lay sun-stricken and raving in the open boat after my escape from the German man-of-war. This I ask myself, but ever does there come before me a hideously vivid vision in reply. I cannot think of the deep sea without shuddering at the nameless things that may at this very moment be crawling and floundering on its slimy bed, worshipping their ancient stone idols and carving their own detestable likenesses on submarine obelisks of water-soaked granite. I dream of a day when they may rise above the billows to drag down into their reeking talons the remnants of puny, war-exhausted mankind. Of a day when the land shall sink and the dark ocean shall ascend amidst universal pandemonium.
Ooh.
The end is near. I hear a noise at the door, as of some immense slippery body lumbering against it.
Before I die, any more trivia? Jeez. Oh, I had the whole bottle.
It shall not find me.
I think it found you. Oh, wait a minute. Is this why you jump?
God, that hand! The window! The window!
Thank you for playing. Wow, that was actually really, really, really enjoyable. We hope you enjoyed immersing yourself in a little pool of cosmic horror. We'd appreciate if you took a moment to rate Dagon and check other games on DLCs. That was so cool. I really enjoyed that. That was really good. That's free as well. It's a free game. That was very enjoyable. I loved the fact that it was more of like a storytelling experience rather than you trying to, like, you know, it's point and click rather. That was really cool. I really enjoyed that. Wow. Wow. I was really. It's got an overwhelmingly positive review on Steam for good reason. That was really cool. I enjoyed that very much. Yeah. So that was Dagon. I don't really think there was like loads of like HP love. There's an alarm going on. HP Lovecraft video games out there that I'm aware of. This is the very first HP Lovecraft game I've ever played, and it was absolutely brilliant experience. I enjoyed that so much. That was very good. I really hope you enjoyed watching. It's a very short game, as you've noticed, but very well done. So yeah, thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed, thank you very much. And I'll see you in whatever I do next. So my name is Feathers, and I will see you next time.